Okay, well, hi, and welcome to this month's Spotlight on Interview. So these are conversations where we shine a light on disability, ERG, and network leaders who are making an incredible contribution to culture change within their organizations. This month's leadership theme is all about intersectionality and the positive and practical outcomes of when networks and resource groups within a company work together. And this month, we're lucky to have not one, but two network leaders to join us for our conversation. And in just a moment, we'll be introducing Toni Davies from PwC's Dawn Disability Network and Eve Pearman from the PwC Gender Balance Network. And we'll be talking all about the intersection between disability and gender and how the Dawn and Gender Balance networks collaborate for maximum impact. And as ever, I'm joined by my colleague, Lauren Pemberton-Nelson. Good afternoon, Lauren.
Hi, really looking forward to diving deep with this spotlight on. I know that it's increasingly something that our members focus on, of course, collaborating with other networks and working together. And it can be really impactful and powerful to create organisational change. We know that PwC has a history of cross collaboration with other, especially with the Dawn network around other staff networks, and we have a briefing about this which is available in our member zone, so it's definitely worth checking that out too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Eve and Toni, it's great to have you here, and I wonder if we could just start maybe with some introduction. So if you could both just tell us a little bit about your role, your day jobs at PwC, and then importantly, what is it that has drawn you to a leadership position in your respective networks? So Toni, maybe could I start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a senior associate in our technology and internal firm services risk team. So we assess all the internal technologies that people want to use in the firm. So as you can imagine, at the moment, we're very busy. I originally got involved with Dawn when PwC launched their Green Light to Talk campaign, which is our mental health in the workplace campaign, which is probably around about 7 to 8 years old now. And then I progressively got more and more involved, and then I became Midlands lead for Dawn, and then progressed from there to be co-chair.
Great. Thank you, Toni. It's great to have you here today. And Eve, welcome. We'd love to hear a bit about your background as well.
Thank you. Hi, I'm very glad to be here. So I'm Eve, I'm a manager at PwC. I work in inclusion and diversity risk, so I help our clients with inclusion and diversity, so with topics such as the conversation we're having today, people, processes, well-being, all sorts of people-related risks. And to be honest, actually, I got into that a lot from the work that I did in the networks. So I joined PwC about 3 years ago, and then immediately joined the Gender Balance Network. And the reason I was really passionate about that is before I used to work in tech, and I'd seen a lot of gender inequality and the lack of equal opportunities that women had within tech. So that's what really spurred me on to join the Gender Balance when I came to PwC, and then it's been really great to get involved with all of the other networks and grow my role to my day job as well. So yeah,
Great. Thanks, Eve. Really interesting background, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more about how you're both working together.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. So the next question is sort of a two-part question. The first is around where do the agendas of the two networks intersect with the topics that you focus on? So what are the sort of common things that you work on together?
Sure, yeah. So I think from a broad perspective, I mean, there's so many different intersections between gender and disability. And I think it's really important that we look at how the different aspects of our identities influence the experiences that we have within our day-to-day life. Some of the ways that we think about it from a gender balance network perspective is for example, gender-based violence and how women with disabilities are more likely to be victims of gender-based violence, toxic masculinity and how that overlaps with ableism, and for example, you know, that ingrained concept that men are self-sufficient and you can't rely on anyone else, and then that can become incompatible with your lived experience when actually sometimes you need to reach out to other people for support, and that's part of the way that your day-to-day experience is. And then for example, like how it takes women longer to receive medical diagnoses than it does for men. So there's a whole bunch of ways that our kind of agendas overlap. And then thinking about work that we've done, one that I was really involved in is we ran a session where individuals from the Dawn Network shared their lived experiences of that intersection between gender and disability. And that was a really powerful session. I know definitely within the Gender Balance Network, it was really well received. I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes to how sometimes we can kind of get a one-track mind of when we think about gender inequality, and we focus really heavily on the experiences of women, but especially within Gender Balance Network, we're very conscious of, you know, you don't want to fall down that sort of white feminist pit hole, and there's so many different experiences that people have, and that was such a great example that showcased that. And I think people found it really moving to hear about people saying, you know, I had to fight to get my diagnosis, or somebody spoke about the sexism that sometimes they experienced getting the tube to work, because, for example, if they were in a wheelchair and a man felt that they could come and push them in the wheelchair, and just when you say it out loud, things that are completely unacceptable, but other people who don't experience that might not think of.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really sort of powerful to hear that the sort of wide-ranging way that you focus on it, if that makes sense. Toni, if I could just bring you in as well, if in terms of what you focus on, especially around maybe for the employees within PWC. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So like within PWC, we have kind of various avenues for people to get support. You know, as you said, a lot of us people network leadership teams kind of work as closely together as we can, and there is a kind of company level campaign called Everyday Inclusion, which we all collaborate with monthly themes. So if there is a theme that we can, multiple people networks can kind of collaborate on an event on, we know where we can work towards. But we have in the Dawn network, we have a buddying scheme where we can match people one-to-one depending on, you know, their conditions or circumstances. So you don't necessarily have to have a disability. You could be a parent or a carer, for example. We have a small group sessions as well, so there are probably around about 8 to 10 people. We have neurodiverse and hearing impairment ones at the moment, and we're going to roll out more over the coming 12 months. And yeah, we try and have a variety of people on our leadership teams. So we have Chris, who is our Dawn point of contact for yourselves at Purple Space, and we have Denise, who works with Chris. And they have completely different roles within PWC, completely different perspectives, and we try and make sure that we bring lots of that in when we try and organise events. And I think when we do collaboration events, as Eve says, they have such an impact, especially when it's colleagues sharing their stories, people can connect with that so much easier. And sharing those real experiences, for example, as Eve said, men that have kind of generalized pain conditions get diagnosed faster because there's the preconception of, well, if a man's in pain, it's real pain. So, you know, it's kind of opening those conversations up, and allowing our colleagues kind of to ask questions as well in a safe environment. I think that's something that they really appreciate.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Can I ask a little supplementary question then in relation to the last answer? I just wanted to go back to the you called it the everyday inclusion framework. Yeah, that sounds like a really useful framework. So I just wondered sort of who within PWC develops that framework, who decides on those kind of 12 themes, and can you give us a little flavour of maybe a couple of you know, what kind of themes do you generally choose?
So it's our inclusion, community and wellbeing team that coordinates the Everyday Inclusion campaign. The themes, they like to ensure that they cover as many of our different people networks as possible. So we have around about 12 to 13 people networks, including faith networks. And yeah, we try to kind of, as I said, have a theme a month. They try and also align that with awareness days as well. So for example, I think June is LGBTQ plus awareness, because that's been a lot of it's History Month and it's Pride Month for a lot of places in the UK. So we do try and kind of organise it so it falls in line with plans that people networks will already be in the process of organising. And in September we have Everyday Inclusion Month, because it's Inclusion Week at the end of September, and that's a week when all of us people networks work together to do lots of different comms and events, all underneath the Everyday Inclusion banner.
Great, thank you. So can I ask then, Eve, you were talking a little bit about one of the events that you had collaborated on with the Dawn network. I wondered if you could just expand a little bit about what you did together, but then would love to hear a little bit about the impact of that collaboration, any positive effects that you were able to measure in terms of employees' experience or engagement.
Yeah, definitely. So in that event, it was a series of intersectionality events that a number of the networks ran, where we collaborated to kind of showcase, as it says on the tin, the intersections between the different networks. So in the collaboration between the Gender Balance Network and the Dawn Network, we focused on that impact of gender and disability, and we had a panel of people from PWC who shared their lived experiences and how those two aspects of their identity had impacted their experiences. And I think the main impact was actually, as Toni said, was a lot of this is allowing people safe spaces to ask questions that they might not feel comfortable asking outside. And it is a learning space. And I mean, we're all learning, I'm learning, and it just allows people to ask questions that sometimes they think, I'm not entirely sure and I want to learn, and can you help me? And for a lot of people on that call, it was around helping them to understand the lived experiences. But then also, I think sometimes there's a massive part around showing that it's okay to talk about these experiences, and when bad things happen to us because of the intersections that we have, sometimes it is really important to stand up and say, this thing happened to me, and what are we going to do as a community to make sure that that doesn't happen to anyone again? And definitely within PWC, I think that's a really big part of the work that we do within the networks, is helping people to feel included, and that if something bad happens to them, whether within PWC, whether a client, because we interact with a whole range of clients and other organisations, or whether just out and about in their daily life, that they have somewhere that they can come and talk to people who, I mean, we're 22,000 people, so there's probably someone who's had a similar experience to you, talk to people about what they've experienced, unpick it, and then think around what can we do in the future to make people's experiences better.
Yeah, Great, thanks, Eve. And Toni, you were nodding away there. Just anything to add in terms of your perspective on the impact of that particular piece of collaboration?
No, so just echoing Eve, really, all the different intersectionality events have had their own impacts, and they've been able to reach people that would necessarily be interested in the other people networks as standard, because they wouldn't think of the kind of subject matters. So yeah, we every time we hold one of these events, we always get comments afterwards about how we didn't think about that, or that was really interesting, I hadn't even considered that person's point of view. So yeah, just as you've said, we always have that impact come back to us.
It's a really helpful reminder, isn't it? Because there's a logic, isn't there, to why we organize our networks and our EIGs on these kind of single strand lines, but of course that's not the reality, and anything we can do to remind ourselves and others that we're kind of complex individuals is always going to be a helpful thing. Yeah, thanks, Toni.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy just how much it isn't just about like solely the work-life aspect and employees, and that people do have a space where even if it's things outside, that they still feel like they can come and have a safe space, really. I think, yeah, like it's great, because then there's people who we've seen from some of our members, they might intersect between race, gender, disability, and they'd go to one particular network, but then through networks working together, they feel like they can then open up about other aspects of their identity too. So it is really, really powerful to hear that. Thank you. And the work that you're doing is so wonderful. And do you have any advice to others who might be looking to work more closely with other staff networks and sort of replicate the synced up approach that you have? Toni?
Yeah, so just thinking, I think the everyday inclusion calendar that we have really helps us, because we all have our kind of themed awareness days that happen throughout the year anyway. So I think the everyday inclusion kind of helps us go, okay, we know these awareness days are happening for us within our network, but actually we also are now aware that this is also happening. Where can we work together on something? And we also kind of have monthly people network meetings where our inclusion team kind of shares messaging from the board and the decisions that have been made centrally, and it also allows us people networks to share plans and ideas that are happening as well. So yeah, it's a lot of communication and collaboration, and I think know what you want to do for like kind of the 12 months, even if it's just a idea or a theme. The more time you give yourselves to kind of discuss and plan, the easier it'll get to kind of let these things happen organically.
Thank you. And Eve?
Yeah, really, I mean, echoing what Toni said, but as Toni was speaking, thinking about that monthly meeting that we all have where all of the leadership teams from the different networks attend, that's such a great opportunity. Toni might say, next month we're doing this, and suddenly the gender balance network might think, oh, you know what, that does impact our members, and now we can go away and either share it with our members or collaborate with Dawn, and it opens up so many avenues for collaboration. But yeah, I think it's really important because, and it's important that people think about the work that other networks are doing, rather than just thinking about their own specific area, because if we think about who's within our networks, what might we be excluding by not thinking about the other aspects of their identity that impact their experience. But I would definitely recommend linking up with other people networks. Some of our most kind of powerful and important events have come from that, and we always get such great feedback, and they're just an email away, and it's so easy.
Thank you.
That's a great message to to end on, Eve, that they're just an email away. And I think listening to you both respond to Lauren's question in terms of your advice is right. So there's a couple of things there in terms of, one is this sort of natural sort of curiosity and interest in the wider experience of colleagues, but then there's also this process whereby the opportunity to collaborate, it's kind of almost baked into the way that PWC is approaching equality as well. So with the everyday inclusion framework, with the monthly meetings there, so you've kind of got it covered if you have that interest, but you've also participated in these really structured opportunities to listen, learn and share and collaborate. So it's really useful. Yeah, great takeaways. Well, listen, we, as ever, could continue talking to our guests for much longer, but we've come to the end of our time together. So Eve and Toni, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you for the invite.
And we look forward to continuing the conversation about how networks and ERGs work together throughout the month in the member zone. And of course, we'll be talking about this across the social media airways as well. So thank you for listening, and do join us in September when we'll be meeting another leader from the Purple Space community, where this time we'll be discussing how networks and ERGs help to build employees' inner confidence. So thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.